Hi guys, and welcome to the first Truelogic DX Masterclass. Today, we're going to be covering the very basics of SEO. So we're going to talk about SEO 101. Normally, in a session like this, I like to take away participants' objectives and the key takeaways that you want. But obviously, because of the size of the forum that we've got, there are over 100 people here. I would love to hear your questions at the latter part of the conversation. So if you guys have questions at any point in time during the session, please use the chat box, and we will leave the last 15 minutes of the session so that you can raise questions. So without further ado, let me just capture the screen so I can share the slides. Okay. So thank you very much for joining us today. I'm not sure if you guys can see it, but I can sort of see you guys over here on a monitor, on a huge monitor over here. And we're going to be talking about SEO 101, the basics. And no SEO conversation, I think, gets off the right foot if you don't talk about the basics of how search engines work. So let's begin with an intro to SEO, right? Which is essentially an intro to search. So everybody's aware, right? This is Google, and not all websites with search functions are search engines. Like Google, Baidu, DuckDuckGo, Bing. These are search engines, right? Yahoo is not. Yahoo is a portal. It has a search engine, but it is not essentially a search engine. The business model is just different. MSN is not a search engine, right? It's also a portal. It's got Bing as its search engine. But what is a search engine? And the way I like to explain this is a search engine is really just a very, very, very powerful website with three main functions. And I always want people to understand the fundamentals of these functions. And the fundamental function of a search engine is they crawl, they index, and they rank. To put that in layman's terms, what we mean is the search engines like to scan as much of the accessible internet as much as possible. So there are two keywords there in that phrase for crawl, right? Scan and accessible. Because just because search engines like to scan all of the internet does not mean that they can. You, as a person that owns a brand, owns a business, owns a website, actually do have the ability to control what a search engine is and is not able to scan in your site. But the act of scanning your website, whether it's Google, it's Bing, it's DuckDuckGo, it's Baidu, regardless of whichever search engine it is, the act of scanning the content on your website is called crawling. Okay? So it's a very important function, and it's the first thing that a search engine will do. The second function of the search engine is called indexing. And in layman's terms, indexing is about a search engine committing your website to memory. So remember, it scans the internet, right? Like all permissible pages, all pages that it is allowed to scan, it will attempt to remember. It will not successfully remember everything, but you will rank, you will perform on search, not based off of what your website is on the internet. It will perform based off of what the search engine remembers of you on the internet. Does that make sense? So Google, when you do a Google search, have you guys ever noticed how Google returns a result in 0.02 seconds, 0.3 seconds, 0.45 seconds, 0.12 seconds? And have you guys ever wondered, like, how is it returning results that quickly? And the reason it's able to return results that quickly is because Google is not pulling results from the internet when you perform a Google search. It is pulling information from memory, right? And so you'll notice that whenever you perform a search, and when you do SEO, what you want to do is really appear on ranking, and everybody talks about ranking. But ranking is really just the third function of the internet, which is organizing all of the information that it has scanned, organizing all of the information that it remembers. So the process of ranking is just Google comparing your website to every other web page that it has scanned and remembered, and then organizing them from most relevant to least relevant. Most of the activities that SEOs will do will be related to ranking, but indexing is not what makes you rank. Crawling is not what makes you rank. However, in order to rank, you must be indexed. And in order to index, you must be crawled, right? So Yes, crawling is not a ranking factor. Yes, indexing is not a ranking factor. But if these two don't perform well, you will not rank at all. So those are the three primary basic functions of a search engine: the act of scanning your website, remembering your website, and ranking your website. Now let's talk about that in a bit more detail. And so I'll take you to another slide, right? This is what you're looking at is a practical application of when we check whether Google can scan your website or not. And then I'll dive into a bit more technical details in a bit. But the easiest way to find out how many of your pages Google has scanned is with a tool called Google Search Console. But if that's not installed, one of the easiest ways to find out is by performing a search like this. This is called a site search. So you put in site : and then the domain of your website. And then Google will essentially tell you, oh, I have 675 of those pages, right? I remember 675 of those pages within that domain. And the reason this matters is if you have a website with, let's say, 20,000 products, but you're only seeing 100 results appear from a search like this, then that means Google is omitting all the several thousand products that you have out there, right? So this is one way to check that out. When you want to check for the index, I'll go back to crawl again in a bit, but when you want to check for the index, it doesn't just matter that you know your website appears a certain way to a user. The way your website appears is not necessarily how Google remembers it. And remember, Google does not rank you based off of what you think your website looks like. It ranks you based off of how it remembers your website to look. It ranks you based off of what content it remembers your website to have. So let me give you guys an example, right? So aside from you looking at what Google's memory of your website is, it's also called the cache, right? In order for you to check that out, or when you do that, you do a search for your website and then you click the ellipsis inside search. You're seeing it as these three dots here. And if you click that, the option cached appears. And once you click that, Google gives you a result above the header that looks like this. Now, why does this matter? Because not only does it tell you, not only will it show you what Google remembers your page to look like, it also tells you the date and time it last committed your website to memory, right? And if your website is going to stand a chance of appearing on the first page of results, you ideally want to see that as 3 days or less. In 7 days or less, you're probably going to appear on the lower first page, second page, third page, sure. But if you're really after the traffic for a certain idea, you want that to be same day, 2 days, 3 days at best. So not only are you seeing what Google remembers of your website, you're also seeing the last time it committed your website to memory. So this is what happens when you check how Google remembers your web page. Now, here's a practical application of that, right? Like, let's take this as an example. This is the Ayala Mall's website. And this is what your browser and what your users can see. This is what everybody can see when it comes to as far as this website is concerned. But when I check it against what Google remembers, when I check Google's cache against the page, this is what Google sees, right? So there's a discrepancy, right? There's a discrepancy between what the users will see, and there's a discrepancy between what Google remembers. And the problem with a situation like this is Google will attempt to rank you. Google will make you relevant based off of the content of its memory, not the content that actually exists on your page. And so this practice is fairly important, right? Like, just because you thought you did everything right does not necessarily mean you did. You do want to check, how does Google remember my web page? And this is one of the simplest ways to do that. Okay, so crawling and indexing. Let's do a quick sweep of the technical SEO. So when you do technical SEO optimization, it addresses a couple of things. The first thing it addresses is, do you enable Google and other search engines to actually scan your website, right? Because there are elements in your website that can prevent Google from being able to successfully do this, and other search engines. The other is technical SEO addresses indexing issues, meaning memory issues. Does Google remember the web page exactly as you prescribed it? Or does your web page appear one way to you And then does it appear differently in the memory of the Google search engine in another, right? That's the other one. But the other things that are addressed in technical SEO are some of the quality issues that your websites might face. Like take, for example, core web vital issues or speed issues. The faster your website, the better your quality score. Another thing that it checks for is duplications. This is particularly notorious when websites have multiple countries and multiple languages. If you don't manage your duplication correctly, what you might wind up doing is your different languages and your different country versions might wind up cannibalizing traffic off of each other versus being able to help each other out. And then the last one is mobility, right? Because the search engine is a mobile first index now. And your likelihood of appearing on the first page is because your website is very mobile friendly compared to your competitors that might not be. So let's talk about what these things are, like in a nutshell, right? And because I'm going to try to keep this light and within 2 hours, which is not always easy when it comes to an SEO conversation. Let's talk about the robots.txt file. This is essentially a command to the bot, the crawler, even to browsers that tells them whether they are allowed into the premises of your website or not. So think of the robots.txt file as a set of instructions. And it says where you're allowed to enter in the premises and where you're not allowed to enter into the premises. So let's do this analogy. Let's pretend the bot, the crawler, the tool that Google uses to scan the website is a grab food delivery person. Like, let's pretend that's what the bot is. The bot gets to the location, it finds the location, and now it has to deliver the food to your doorstep. You, your apartment, your condo unit, whatever, you are the web page that it has to find. If there are instructions right at the guardhouse that says all deliveries not allowed within premises, then immediately the bot can no longer go into the premises, much less find the building, much less find the unit, right? And that's what the robots.txt file says. Now, if the instructions say, okay, you're allowed to go past the guardhouse, but you're only allowed to leave it at the reception of the specific building, then that's another command inside your robots.txt file. Now the bot is actually able to go into the compound, find the actual building, but not find the actual room where it's allowed to drop off the delivery. Likewise, the robots.txt file might say, okay, you're allowed there, but you're only allowed up to the common area of that floor, and you're not allowed to go to the specific unit. But when there are no commands inside the robots.txt file, essentially, that grab food delivery, who is an analogy for our crawler here, can just go to the location, find the building, go to the necessary floor, find the unit number, ring the doorbell, and then hand the delivery over. Right? When you allow it all access, it's able to find the specific unit. That's what the robots.txt file does. Now, so that's the robot.txt file. It says where our crawler or our grab food delivery person in this case is allowed to go and where they're not allowed to go. Let's talk about what the sitemap is. And we'll use the same analogy, right? If this is the first time the grab food driver is delivering to this location, and then you said it is 4S Sigma, right? Please deliver it to 4S Sigma, Capitol Hills Drive, Quezon City, let's say. It knows where Quezon City is, it knows where Capitol Hills Drive is, and then it finds, let's call it Capitol Estates. It finds the Capitol Estate location. There is no robot.txt file that prevents it from being able to go to the location it needs. But at the guardhouse, aside from it not being forbidden by a robots.txt file, the guard is nice enough to tell the grab food driver, okay, here's a map of the estate, and the location you're looking for is here. The amount of time the grab food driver will now take to deliver it from guardhouse to your specific unit is probably cut in half. In short, it will find the location more efficiently because it doesn't have to ask the guard, hey, which building is that in? And does this go to the 4th floor? And when I get off the elevator, do I make a left or a right? It now just follows a map to get to the location more efficiently. That's what a sitemap does for the crawler. It allows you to prioritize which pages. If there are no instructions, and let's assume the buildings have no labels, the delivery driver literally has to go to the guard of one building and says, hey, is this building? Is this building? Is this building? Does this person live here? Until it finds the right one, and then says, okay, where's the elevator to the 4th floor? It has to find the elevator. And then when it gets to the elevator, it takes a look at, does it flag a left or a right? And then it follows the room numbers until it finds the location it needs to get to. It's very inefficient. But if you don't have a sitemap, that is precisely what the crawler bot goes through in order to make that delivery, right? So the sitemap doesn't necessarily make scanning or crawling possible. It just makes it more efficient. Now, let's talk about canonicals. And canonicals are related to duplication. Canonicals are just a way for you to indicate that the page is authoritative for its content. Like meaning, hey, you're just telling Google, hey, Google, the content I have on this page, I own it. It's not owned by any other page. I didn't rip it off any other website. It belongs to me. By default, a page canonicals to itself. By default, a page canonicals to itself. But canonicals are highly related to the duplication issue, because where you have websites that serve multiple countries. So I'll give you guys an example. If you are a brand that let's say sells services, if you're a brand, let's say you sell shirts, right? You sell men's blue pastel shirt. Like, let's say this is what you sell. And you sell it in the Philippine market, and you sell it in the Hong Kong market, and then you sell it in the Singaporean market. And in order to be relevant in those locations, your website has a /PH/SG/HK, let's say. And let's say your content in Hong Kong is in Cantonese or in Mandarin. So that blue pastel shirt for men, does it require a different description, or is it the same blue pastel shirt, right? It probably is. So there's no need to create a unique description in Hong Kong or in Singapore or in the Philippines. But because you created a subfolder for each market, because let's say you might not be selling some items necessarily in Singapore, and you're not necessarily selling some items in Hong Kong. And then some items might be available in those territories and not available in the Philippines, right? But because this specific item is being sold across all territories, you're likely to use the same description. You're likely to use the same content. You're likely to use the same image. When Google scans your website and finds all 3 pages, it is now bewildered. It's wondering, okay, which page actually owns the content for this blue shirt, and which page actually owns that description, right? And it wants to know, where do I attribute ownership? Where do I attribute relevance to? Hong Kong, Singapore, or Philippines? When you tell the website, attribute authority to the Philippine domain, so attribute the authority to the Philippine domain, but share authority to the different versions. Now your 3 shirt pages are not cannibalizing each other for traffic. They are sharing authority. They're helping each other rank. And so that's what canonicals do, right? The Philippine page says, hey, I own this content, but the /SG page is my alternate, and the /Hong Kong page, those are my alternates. What that essentially does is it allows those 3 product pages that have the same product to not compete against each other and to help each other out in terms of relevance. Now, what are redirects? I think a great example would be this, right? Where if I go to a specific page and I don't find what I need, it just creates for very bad user experiences. And so the right thing for a brand to do is, if you no longer serve that content, then at least route me to the next page that might be able to help me, right? So that's an example of when you do a redirect. It might be because an item is not in stock. It might be because you have retired that specific service. It might be because that blog is old. There's a ton of reasons why you might want to take down a page. But before you decide that that page offers you no value, one of the things that you want to look at is, did anybody in the internet make noise about that page in the first place? Right? Did anybody make noise about that page? Because that means somebody on the internet is vouching for the content of your page. And if you just turn it off, you lose that vouch. So one of the things that you want to do is you want to transfer that vouch over, ideally to the parent page of that page you're taking down. So that's one thing that you do. Two is you want to help facilitate the user's experience. You don't want them to have bummer experiences in your website. Another is you might have replaced the product with something newer, right? So there's no reason why you should not redirect that page over to either a similar article, a similar product, a similar service page, and so on and so forth. So that's why you use redirects. You don't want the users to have bummer experiences by winding up in a dead-end page, right? Essentially, that's a page that just says, nope, not here, can't help you, right? It doesn't really help the users. And Google takes that against you by saying, okay, so you don't really care about your users. I'll route my users to web pages that care about them. The next one is the page status. And why do you care about this? Let's use the Grab driver analogy one more time. So the page status is something the server tells a user agent, a browser, a bot, right? Like before you ever get to interact with a website, your browser sends a ping to the server of a website. And the website has to respond by saying, yep, I know where that is. Yes, I found that page. Or no, that page doesn't exist. And normally the best I would say, page status that you can have is called a 200. So a 200 status is the best because it means I found the page. A 200 status is essentially the Grab driver seamlessly entering the estate, finding the building, going to the right floor, finding the unit, and hand delivering the parcel over to the person he was looking for. That's what's represented by a 200 message. Okay, clear so far. So the next message that we want to see is a 300 message, whether it's 301, 302, whatever number happens after 3, right? But essentially, you're looking for a 300 redirect. And what happens is the driver enters the estate, finds the building, finds the floor, finds the unit, knocks on the unit, and wants to hand over the parcel. But the person that answers the door says, oh no, he's not here right now. He's at the neighbor 2 doors down, right? But the bottom line is the user still finds the information they're looking for. They still find the person and they still get to deliver the parcel. That's essentially what happens when you do a redirect. Now, what happens in a 400 server or 400 page status message? The Grab driver, in this case, the user agent, goes to the estate, finds the building, finds the floor, and then goes to the unit. And when they go to the unit, the person that answers the door is, there's nobody like that here, right? Like we don't know anybody like that. So they do find the unit. They just don't find the person they're looking for, right? The person that answers the door says, oh, I don't know where that person is. They're not redirected. Essentially, the Grab driver's adventure is over. It dead ends, right? Now, the worst one is called a 500 status message, where the person goes to the estate, they find the building, and they realize, the unit's not there. Even worse, in some cases, they go to the estate and the estate is an empty plot of land, right? There's nothing there. So 500 error messages usually indicate server issues. That's what it usually talks about. So why does this matter? Because you don't want, remember that Google scans web pages at different intervals, and it will rank you based off of what it remembers. If Google had scanned you at a point in time where your page had a 400 message or a 500 message, it will remember that, right? And remember, in a 400 error message, there is no content. So you're not relevant for anything. Google will attempt to rank you for a page that doesn't exist. And so your rankings will begin to decline. They won't drop, like a bomb. Like you won't tank out like right away. But the more frequently Google sees you having 400 messages, 500 messages, it's an indicator of quality, like whether you care about your users or not. Because people that care about their users make sure that, you satisfy the motivator for the search. And if people can't get into the website or find the page, then you're not satisfying the motivation for the search. The next one is site speed. And site speed is significantly more complex now than it was before, right? Today, we call it web core vitals. We take a look at how quickly the page will load. We take a look at how quickly people can interact with clickable elements in the page. And we take a look at, whether the layout is funky X number of pages after the page has been rendered. All of those get looked at in terms of site speed. But the ideal is still about 3 seconds or less. You want your web page to load in 3 seconds or less. Normally, the winning strategy for this is to keep your web page sizes small. And the most common culprits for websites that don't meet a speed requirement tend to be A, you're too cheap on your servers, right? B, you're very exaggerated on your image quality. You don't need a 3 MB image, right? You're not going to post it on a billboard. You don't need an 8 megapixel image on your website. And so when you go overboard on the image quality, this tends to use up a lot of resources, especially on mobile. And then the last bit is, did you code it in a clunky way? Like, did you code your website in a clunky way where things don't organize themselves properly, things keep moving around, even though the user has no interactions with the page, and so on and so forth. And there are certain things that you can do to optimize for them. But when you're looking for them, that's what you're looking for. A website that loads slow, probably because the server is cheap or the images are too large, or probably because it uses plugins that it doesn't need. Right? You're looking for websites where you can interact with immediately and that don't relay out themselves while you're interacting with the page. The elements don't move as you interact with the page. Okay, so that's what we check for when we say site speed. I addressed duplication earlier, and then the last one is mobility because it's a mobile first index, right? Make sure your website is mobile friendly or be ready to lose to a competitor whose website is. All right? So if there are any questions about that, please plug them in on the chat. And as always, I'll continue and I'll address all questions in the last 15 minutes. Okay, so let's talk about content metrics, because one of the reasons I like to bring up content is, and I say this a lot, it is the single most powerful ranking factor. Content is the most powerful ranking factor, operating under the assumption Google can scan your website and operating under the assumption Google can remember your website. The primary indicator of whether or not you are creating a quality experience, of whether or not you are fulfilling a search motivation, is in your content. I can't even stress enough like how important your content is to your users, to satisfying search motivations, and so on and so forth. So the way I like to do it is to summarize it against the screen that you're looking at, right? There are certain things that enable Google to understand what you're relevant for. Remember, Google scans, remembers, and organizes all the information on the internet in order of relevance. In order to know what's relevant and what's not relevant, it depends on what Google sees on the page. And some of the things that it looks at on the page that are influenced by your content, by the way, are the following things. So your URL, for example, right? Your URL, it's that thing on the address bar. Keep it very readable. Keep it readable. Don't use random numbers. Don't use symbols. Don't do alphanumerics. Keep it readable. And whenever you have an excuse to insert the keyword in the URL, do so, right? Because it's the first relevance indicator. If I had a page that I wanted to rank for the word SEO, Google's first clue that the page it's looking at is relevant for SEO is the word SEO appearing on the URL, right? The next one is the meta title. If I had a page and I wanted to declare to users, remember to users first, if I wanted to declare to users that this is my most relevant page for the SEO topic, then when users perform a search, the SEO word should appear in the meta title. The meta title is that blue thing. Actually, let me change the way I share the screen so that you guys can follow me on a browser. So you should be moving to a browser with me. And if I type in Truelogic SEO service, right? I want to rank for the word SEO service. then the word SEO and service has to appear on my meta title and my meta description, right? At least mostly my meta title. But the word SEO has to appear in my meta title. It has to appear in my meta description. If it does not, then how does Google know you are relevant for that topic or not, right? So this is the second thing you want to optimize for. Now let's go back to the presentation. So your URL, your meta title. Notice that I didn't say meta description, but the next one that I do indicate to be important is schema. Now, schema is not very straightforward. It's a way of coding your website where you're helping search engines. So this one's not for users. This is for search engines, but it's a way for you to help the search engine understand that that piece of content is important. The way I like to describe schema is like a spotlight on a stage, right? So the way I like to describe schema is very much like a spotlight on a stage. There's this rule in the algorithm that content that appears to the top and to the left are more relevant than content that appears to the bottom, right? So anything that appears at the top is more relevant than anything that appears on the bottom. But a piece of content might be relevant even though it appears on the footer, even though it appears in the last 100 words, even though it appears in whatever section, right? And what schema does is it sort of shines a spotlight in that section of your web page so that you can tell Google, hey, I know this doesn't appear to the top and to the left, but it's a pretty important piece of information. And those pieces of information might be products, might be business info, might be an address, might be FAQs. And it's so that you can declare to Google, hey, this piece of information is very important to users. Now, why do you want the fuss and bother of having to comply to something like schema? Let's go practical. Let's go back to the browser again, right? And I'll perform a search for let's say a product. Let's do a product. Let's go Sherriol men's bracelet. Of course, Google Shopping, right? But this is not SEO, so not related to SEO. But look at this, right? Look at how Google displays this search. The reason Google displays it like this, and it displays the image, right? Google is saying, hey, is this the product you're looking for? Are these the products you're looking for? So the reason Google does these is because these pages comply with what's called a product schema. Google understands that these pages represent products, and so it is serving you a search result that is enriched. So this is what we call a rich snippet, right? In the Lazada case, look at this, right? Aside from the fact that it tells you how many items, it tells you the aggregate rating of the items, how many people cast a vote for that item, and so on and so forth. But the reason you're not seeing a standard meta title, meta description, text-only description is because Google understands the context of your search, and it's feeding you a page, a product page that satisfies the motivation for that search, right? This, without product schema, the search result would not look like this. It would just look like a plain meta title and meta description. Okay, it would look like something like this. All right. So let's move back. And it doesn't just apply to products, by the way. Let's do a different one. I'll try what is SEO. Right. So Google's got an answer box. But I'm not seeing any FAQ snippets. But you see these results, right? People also ask. You see these? Google understands that the search I just made, is an informational search, right? And that's why it's not offering me a product, right? I'm not seeing a product image on the right and so on and so forth. But it is showing me when I do this, Google is not answering my question. Google is giving me an answer from a third-party website. Right? And if I want to read more, I just have to click on the link. In order for Google to understand that you're providing information, there's a right way to provide, there's a right way to code for these kinds of information. So again, you can do it for locations, business information, products, flight details, like what events, right? All of those. So schema has a lot of uses, and I think it's always ignored, but it's a very important contextual tool. So that's it for schema. The next one are breadcrumbs. Let's go back to the search, right? And I'm wondering if you notice that when Google gives you a search result, let's do digital marketing services, right? When Google gives you search results, notice that Google does not give you a URL anymore, right? In the old days, we used to see domain.com/subfolder/page, right? And today, that's not the case. Google just gives you the breadcrumb. And so it's a question of, A, do you utilize breadcrumbs? That's one. And then two, when you do you use it to give users a clue in terms of what this page is relevant for, right? So in the case of the illustrated example, notice how level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, like this is how the user got to that page, right? It's a navigation trail. This is why it's called a breadcrumb, like Hansel and Gretel. But if you want the page to be relevant for an idea, then the keyword has to appear inside the breadcrumb. Now, before I talk about the H1 tag, I will talk about content again, right? Remember how it is the most powerful ranking factor. And remember how I said earlier, content that appears to the top and to the left, but mostly content that appears at the top is more relevant than content that appears at the bottom. Google attributes more relevance to ideas that appear at the top of a page than ones that appear at the bottom. And what content appears more to the top of any page than your H1 tag? So if your content is your most powerful ranking factor, your H1 is your most powerful content. Now, and now you might say, Bernard, we already know this. Why are you even talking about it? Because in several cases, I will say not most anymore, but still in several cases, I will see the H1 utilized as a styling device. I'll see it used in a banner. I'll see it deliver flavor text. I'll see it make a promise, but not have the keyword, which doesn't make sense, right? If your page is talking about marketing services, if your page is talking about men's shirts, if your page is talking about running shoes, then utilize the H1 to declare to your users that, hey, this page is about running shoes, right? Don't use an H2, don't use an H3. And just because the H1 is huge doesn't mean it has to stay that way. You can style it, but I would say always make sure that you utilize the H1 as content. Don't use it as a design element. Okay, now what about the subheaders? Yes, they still matter, but they don't matter in terms of keyword utilization as much as they do with contextual relationships. So what do I mean by that? I mean, if I wanted a page to be relevant for Batman, then my H2s should say Gotham City, Robin, Batcave, Wayne Manor, Alfred, Batmobile, Joker, Bane, right? So and Google will understand, wait, those subtopics are related to the Batman topic, right? And so it understands that your page is contextually related to this one idea. Now, the next one is the keywords in the first 100 words. Does this still matter? And my opinion is, and this is an opinion piece, yes, it does. Because if your page talks about running shoes, then why are you trying to be coy about it? Don't try to write a 400-word description for your product, right? Like, don't say, introducing the evolution of athleticism, blah, 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 taking recreational running to the next level. And then at your 400th word, you say, our running shoes, right? That doesn't make sense. If the page is about running shoes, there's no excuse to not be able to say running shoes in the first 100 words, right? Now, why does that matter? Because number 5 and number 7 are directly related to number 10, right? So we're jumping a bit. They're directly related to number 10. What you're trying to make sure is that the idea you want to be relevant for, the keyword you want to be relevant for, is present above the fold at the first immediate render of your page, right? So you want to make sure that you are relevant right on the first go. So if you followed 5 and if you followed 7, then number 10 should be true, okay? Now, the next one, going back to the H1, where I said content is the most powerful ranking factor, let's talk about number 8. Now, the reason I said greater than 1,500 words is because I said a perfectly optimized informational page. But the word count you ought to prescribe to your pages will need some common sense application. Normally, how we pick the number of words to apply on a page will depend on what Google's understanding is of the context of that page. And Google understands pages by whether it's a branded page or navigational. Is it an informational page? Is it a commercial page? Is it a transactional page? And word count does not always matter based off of the context of a page. I'll give you guys an example. If I typed in Boracay flight deals, right? If Google was smart, what kind of result would it give me? If I did Boracay flight deals, actually, instead of theory, let's do it, right? So if I wanted to do Boracay flight deals, ignore the ads because this is not SEO, right? This is SEM, which is a masterclass for a different day. But look at this, cheap flights. I'm going to pages where I can already book, right? Google is directing me to pages where I can book my flight because it understands that when I do Boracay flight deals, that is a transactional query. I want to buy something. And Google understands that, so it puts me in pages where I am able to facilitate the transaction. In short, that's what satisfies the search motivation, right? When I type in Boracay flight deals. What would not satisfy my search motivation is if Google brought me to a 2,000-word blog where I can find the best flight deals for Boracay and how to book them, right? I'm looking for a flight deal. I'm not looking for a story of how to find the flight deals. So the word count matters. Now, the other thing that you want to do, if you want to know what the appropriate word count is if you type in the query, so let's do fried chicken delivery, right? Take a look at the results that Google is giving us. So top 3 results. So Google is thinking, okay, this might be an informational query, right? And so it's bringing me to Yummy, to a piece of content. And if I wanted to compete, if this is the way I wanted to compete, now I want to take a look at the word count of this page and attempt to match or beat it. Because this is the number 1 result, right? And so Google is assuming, okay, it might be an informational query. Now let's take a look at the next one. The next one is grab food, right? Where it's a transactional query. So Google understands the search that I just did might be informational in nature, might be commercial in nature, because it's giving me this commercial result. The next one it's giving me is also another commercial result. It's driving me to a commercial page where I can do the transaction. So with the exception of Yummy being an informational page, Google seems to understand that the query can be both transactional and informational in nature. Now, what will determine how Google eventually decides whether this is a transactional or informational keyword? And it's simple, your clicks. If users wind up clicking transactional pages versus informational pages, then Google will say, okay, you know what? Most people that click this query are looking for a transaction. It is therefore a transactional keyword, therefore transactional pages will rank. And it can change all the time, by the way. Just because Google decides this is a transactionally intentioned keyword today does not mean it will remain a transactionally intentioned keyword 10 days from now. Google is always judging the context of a query based off of how users behave in search. All right, so this is just an example. Let's go back to the slides. So the volume of content that we recommend would be compete with your competitors, right? But typically, the word count of a product page can be anywhere between 50 to 100 words, right? What matters is that it's original. If it's a transactional page, if it's a product page, though, there is one do not. And the do not is don't just publish the distributor or the manufacturer provided content, right? So normally, if you're a retailer, distributors and manufacturers give you the description of the product. Don't just upload that, because chances are, you're not the first retailer And B, you're probably publishing duplicate content. Somebody else might have published that before you. And remember, Google scans the whole internet, right? So it will know that somebody else published that piece of content, that specific product description before you did. So it's not so much the word count on product pages as it is the uniqueness of the content. Now, in commercially intentioned pages, try to engage your user for at least about 30 seconds. And this is where I'll probably go 30 to 500 words. But what really matters in a commercial piece of content is, are you pulling on the emotional consideration of your users? Is it a piece of content that, yes, utilizes the keyword, but B, solves the problem of the user? Remember, commercial content is made to fill a need, solve a problem, ease a friction, or help address an opportunity, right? So when you craft your content, sure, be mindful of the keyword, but first things first, fulfill the problem, the friction, or the opportunity of the user. That's what you want to use your commercial word count for. And then for informational content, yes, go bonkers. Go 1,000 words, go 2,000 words. Why? Because that's what Google ranks currently, and that's it. Now, a lot of things that I think people are still missing. This used to be best practices all the time, but not anymore. I'm not seeing this practiced a lot. Is people seem to have forgotten to put a tag on the image that they utilize. But remember, an image is content, and you can relate an image to a keyword. If you don't use that, you're missing out on a relevance opportunity, right? So, and it doesn't take 5 minutes, 10 minutes to add a label to an image, right? And the alt tag, by the way, is what happens when you mouse over an image and then a little box appears with words on it. That's the alt tag. You can utilize that as a relevant signal by inserting the keyword in the image, okay? When I say insert the keyword in the image, I don't mean overlay text on your image. That doesn't help, right? If a word is an image, Google doesn't understand that. Okay, the next one is, we already talked about 10, but we are going to talk about number 11. And number 11 is a relevant link. What does that mean? So let's go back to the Truelogic website. Let's talk about the Truelogic website again. If I'm declaring that this page is the most important page about the SEO topic for me, then every time I say SEO anywhere on my website, I ought to point to that page, right? Like if I'm being thoughtful to my users, let's say I put them in a digital marketing strategies for 2021. Like, let's say they're reading that page. And then we're telling them, use SEO, use AdWords, use social media, use EDMs, make sure you have a website. But if I said SEO there and the user wants to learn more, then I'm actually helping my user by pointing them into my SEO page. But you see, if I link that SEO page to another page, then what I'm doing is I'm confusing Google and I'm confusing users about which page of mine is most relevant for the SEO topic, right? And so an inbound link, a vouch coming from your own pages where you're telling Google, hey, that's my most important page for SEO, right? The moment you do that, the moment that page receives an inner link, Google begins to understand, oh, okay. And in this page, he said SEO and pointed to this page, and Google begins to understand every time you talk about that topic, you point back to that page, right? So every time you have an opportunity or an excuse to link back to a page where you can create a better experience for a user to read more, make sure you always point them consistently to the same page. Don't make your pages fight for relevance against each other, right? Have one SEO page that's relevant for that. Have one page for men's blue pastel shirts. Have one page for sports pullover. Have one page for Bluetooth mouse, like whatever the case is, right? But whenever you talk about it, make sure you point an inner link back. The next one are, engagement signals when you use it. Engagement signals are when people leave blog comments. If you're e-commerce, they are product reviews, user comments on that specific product. Why do they matter? At the minimum, it's because it triggers an element called freshness. Whenever your users interact with a page and add to the content of a page, Google becomes encouraged to rescan, recrawl the page. And remember, your crawl frequency, your caching frequency matters, because if you want to be on the first page, you want Google to visit you every day, every 2 days, every 3 days, but probably not every 10 days, every 30 days, right? But remember that engagement signals only matter in your page. If it's happening in Facebook, Google doesn't see that, right? Google doesn't see that the content on this page got liked. It doesn't see that. It only sees the stuff that happens on your site. The last bit, of course, is mobile friendliness, for no-brainer reasons that I've already explained. Now, before I leave this slide, one of the most important things that I will tell you about is that not all metrics are created equal. Not all of these are created equal. Some of them matter more than others, and these items that I highlight in green matter more than the others. They have a higher influence on the relevance of your page. Okay? So these are the ones that matter more than the others. Okay, next. Let's talk about content metrics. When I remember in 2018, we did an event, I think at Century City Mall, and I talked about content, and the takeaway from that conversation was, don't just write content because your boss told you so, right? When you produce content, you have to have an objective in mind, like whether it's a marketing metric or not, but have a goal in mind. Is it to acquire users? Is it to be relevant to an idea? Is it to drive traffic? Is it to refer traffic to a service page? But why are you creating content? Is it to create enticing descriptions of your products? Why are you creating content? And don't just produce content because it's on your task list or whatnot, right? It's on your content calendar. That's not why you produce content. But when you produce content, it has to have the ability to influence the metrics that you're seeing on your screen. It has to have the ability. Great content has the ability to improve your search visibility, your rankings, your search share, your impressions, your click-through rate, the number of visitors you drive into your website, the number of sessions you drive, how many pages they'll view at every visit, how many people will find the experience irrelevant, and how long they stay engaged and relevant on your page. And then, ultimately, if your content is really good, you'll convert them. So what do these metrics mean? And I won't dive too long into these, so I'll make it a bit fast, right? So search visibility is just the number of mentions on the first page of search that you've got, right? Like, so rankings are how high up you are in the first page of the search result. Those are rankings. But search visibility is what if you're ranking for one keyword, you're ranking. But you're ranking for one keyword, right? It's a different story when you're ranking for 1,000 ideas, 2,000 ideas, which is what your search visibility is. The next one is your search share. Search share is really just the amount of space you occupy on a search result. So let me show you what I mean. Let me change the way I share. And if I do this, right, I type in my brand name, not the domain, just the brand name. You'll get my ad. This is not SEO, right? This is AdWords. I'm just protecting my brand equity. But you'll get my brand. You'll see my knowledge graph. You're not seeing the map result. You're seeing my organic result, right? You're seeing our site links. You're seeing videos about us. You're seeing our LinkedIn page, our Facebook page. And so essentially whenever, except for that one, that weird one, almost everything you're seeing on the first page is us, right? But this is what I mean when I say search share. If I did SEO company, let me see. Right, so ad, which is still real estate, right? But notice that I also appear on the snack pack. I don't appear on the knowledge graph because it's not appearing. But notice that I appear on the snack pack, right? The local result, and I appear on the organic result. Right? So terrific. By the way, I didn't expect that this is where I would find it. So my team's doing a great job. Yay. Yay, team. Yay, team. Okay. Anyway, so that's what that metric means. So the next one is the number of impressions. These are the number of times Google offers your website, your domain, your pages as a result to a search, right? And so the higher that number, the more opportunities for you to gain traffic. The other one is, what is the click-through rate of your website? Out of all of the times Google offers you as a search result, how many times do people click on you? And there is a golden number to hit. You ideally want to be at 3% or better, right? If you're not at 3% or better, you want to go back to the content optimization we looked at earlier, and you want to look at your meta title and your meta description, because those two things are CTR improving strategies. The next one is, of course, if your content is great, the number of visitors, if your content is great, you should rank. And if you rank, the number of your visitors should increase, right? But you don't only just want thousands of visitors. It's a different story when you've got one visitor looking at one category page and 7 products, and then one user seeing one category page and then exiting, or one user seeing one product page and then exiting, right? So you also want to take a look at, are you managing to entice your users to look at your other products, to look at your other services, to look at related products? And so the number of page views matter. You ideally want this, over 1. If you're only driving them to 1 page and then they're leaving, then that means the content's not very terrific. The number of page views greater than 1, the bounce rate, meaning the number of people that wind up on the page and consider the experience irrelevant. Ideally, you want to get it to less than 25. That's actually a very high bar to cross, but you do want to get it to below 25. And then you want your users to dwell in your domain for, greater than a minute. Greater than 2 minutes is actually pretty good. But you want them to dwell at least greater than a minute, especially if you're going to drive more than 1 page view for every session, right? And if your content is really good, you want to be able to gain permission to sell or to market to them. All right? So why optimize your web pages? Because you want your users to stay longer on your website. Because if they're staying longer on your website, it's an indicator that they are having at least an acceptable, if not good, experience. And the more of those you have, the more opportunities you have to convert that audience into a lead, and the opportunity to convert that lead into a customer. All right? So why all the drama about SEO? Because SEO hits your whole sales funnel, right? It can address awareness motivations. It can address discovery motivations. It can address consideration motivations. It can address conversion motivations. Retention, not so much. But with the rest, it has the ability to do that. It has the ability to help you move your customers down your sales funnel. It has the ability to help you get people from awareness experiences with you to discovery experiences with you to preferential experiences with you to permission to market and sell to them, which is what happens when you acquire a lead. You get somebody's permission to sell or to market to them, all the way to actually driving a conversion to your site. This is what your SEO is supposed to do. Now, you as the marketer, you as the brand owner, you as the professional, what is the most important role you play in all of this? And the most important role you play is in keyword selection. Like, this is where you can make it or break it. This is where you can make it or break it. And this is where your greatest influence is over your campaign. When you pick out what search motivations you will want to satisfy. I'll repeat that. It's not just about ranking for keywords, right? SEO is more than just ranking for keywords. It's about you having an understanding about what search motivations you want to satisfy. Because you may not be able to satisfy that search motivation, right? For technical reasons, for bureaucracy reasons, for whatever reasons, philosophical reasons, moral reasons, whatever, right? Technical reasons. But when you're picking out keywords, what you're essentially doing is you're deciding the fields where your brand is going to fight, right? You're deciding the lay of the land where your brand will fight and where it will not fight. And keywords are a way for you to say, okay, I'm going to be relevant for that idea, and I'm going to satisfy that search motivation, and I'm not going to satisfy these search motivations. Because nobody satisfies all search motivations, by the way. Nobody satisfies all search motivations. Now, when you're doing your keyword selection and you're driving keyword ideas, there are a couple of things that you need to do. First of all, you need to know your brand, right? What is your brand's identity? Are you a jester brand? Are you a ruler brand? Are you a sage, the way we portray Truelogic to be, right? But what is the identity of your brand? What does your brand say? And what does your brand, more importantly, not say, right? Now, more than just your brand, you do need to understand the product, the commodity, the service that you want to rank, right? If you're trying to, if you want to be relevant for fried chicken, if you want to be relevant for fire extinguisher, if you want to be relevant for office furniture, right? What is the product or service that gets the allocation of your work? And then you need to understand, okay, what search motivator am I gunning for? And how are my users doing a search for that product or commodity or service, right? How are users performing searches for that product, for that commodity, for that service? And you want to type down all of those ideas in one page. Now, it's time for you to do the research, right? Let's say office furniture. What kind of office furniture? Right? Like what kind of office furniture? Are you talking about desks? Are you talking about chairs? Are you talking about monitors, custom cabinets, custom lighting? Like what are you talking about, right? Let's say cameras. Is it professional cameras or affordable cameras? Those are two entirely different ideas. But it's time for you to do the research and find out who's your target market. If your target market is on a budget, then you don't want to say top of the line professional cameras, right? You don't want to do that. Or latest camera of 2022, right? If your audience is very budget conscious, they're not likely to click that search result. So that's not probably where you want to pick your fight. So perform a little research, understand how your customers are doing their search, and do a bit of work, right? You're going to need some tools. You're going to need to understand what search volume is. You'll want to appreciate the value of long tail keywords. I've had this conversation a lot where people don't like long tail keywords because it's got 10 searches a month, 20 searches a month. But that's not the point. The long tail keywords tend to be done by people that already know what they want, right? People that do very precise searches are probably more mature down a sales funnel. So your ability to rank for those keywords are higher, or your ability to convert those users are higher than if somebody did a search for skin product, right? Which is like very vague. Then expand your selection to any way your users might perform a search, because they might do skincare products Makati, skincare products delivery, skincare products available nationwide, skincare products available at Watson's. They might do keyword searches like that. And that's why you do your research. And then you want to check out your competition. If you want to win a keyword, type the query, look at who you're picking a fight with. And if it looks like an SEO did not touch that page, go for it. So here are a couple of samples of tools, right? Like for me, one of my favorite tools is the Google Search Suggest. I don't try to be a thesaurus of all variations of keywords. Google is a thesaurus of all variations of keywords. And so this is what I literally do, right? I literally type in a search I want to do, and then Google gives me search suggestions like, oh, here are some of the most popular ways people are performing this search, right? And all the way to searches related to, like if you go all the way to the bottom, you get searches related to, which are not necessarily the same as search suggest. And I just copy and paste that onto an Excel sheet. But this is how I expand the search results that I do. And then I pick out, okay, I want to pick that fight. I don't want to pick that fight. I want to pick that fight. I don't want to pick that fight. The next one is Moz's Keyword Explorer. By the way, the search suggest is the image at the top and the related searches are the one at the bottom. The Moz Keyword Explorer is a third-party tool. Moz has a freemium, I think, for like 7 days if you want to try it out. Uber Suggest is another great tool. Answer the Public is free, like especially if you're also coming up with keyword ideas. And the Google Keyword Planner, although, you know, the search volumes are going to be funky if you don't put in your credit card. But let me show you how I use some of these tools, right? Here's an example. When I use the Keyword Planner and I don't know what keywords to begin with, I go to the Keyword Planner and I go with the start with. So it'll give you start with discover new keywords or start with a website. And I click on the tab that says start with a website. And then I click run. And then Google will say, oh, here are some of the keywords that I think you are relevant for, right? So without telling Google what I am, it's saying SEO Company Philippines, Digital Marketing Philippines, SEO Services Philippines. Google is telling me, I think you're relevant for these ideas. Remember, Google has scanned and remembered your pages. It knows your content. And so it will say, okay, I think you are related to the following ideas, right? And so this is where I start when I'm in a slump for what keywords do I begin with. Okay, The other thing that I do when I pick out keywords is I look at ranking equity. So what you're looking at is just a comparison between, in this case, 4 brands, right? And I want to take a look at, okay, what keyword here is being ignored? And do I have an opportunity to rank for it? And why does it matter? So let's take this one as an example, right? Metro Bank for personal loan Philippines, right? BPI is 7th, BDO is 15th, Security Bank is 1st. Great job. But now I want to know, okay, so is this low-hanging fruit for Metro Bank? And so what I do is I do a site colon search for Metro Bank and I type in the keyword with quotes in it, right? I do personal loan and I want to find out why is Metro Bank not relevant for this keyword? It's such an old authoritative website. It's a top of mind brand. How can they not be relevant for this keyword when they have this product, right? And what I'll see is Google will tell me, nope, they don't have any pages that precisely match that keyword. And so this is what I mean, right? When I say, yeah, keywords still matter. The exact matchness still matters. If Metro Bank had no pages where personal loans appears in the URL, in the meta title, in the H1, in the body content, then Google thinks, they're not relevant. They're contextually related, which is what it's offering me here, right? This is what it's offering me here as you might want to check out this page. But essentially what Google is telling me is there's nothing precisely related to this topic, right? So what I'm looking for here on ranking equity is what are the keywords like, and I'm paying attention to the pink ones, right? The green ones are where they're doing excellent. The pink ones are the opportunities. So if my client were BDO, some of the keywords I would look at might be best bank in the Philippines, where they're number 10. I might look at, well, peso net transfer, not so sure. Personal loan Philippines would be a keyword I would go after because that's already ranking equity. I'm on the 2nd page, not quite on the 1st page, right? Exchange rate USD to PHP because this one's available immediately right on their homepage, and so on and so forth. So the items in pink, I don't just look at what they're doing well on. I'm looking at what are they almost doing well on that maybe I should focus my SEO on that, right? So that's another item to look at. The next item is if I want to rank for that, right? And this was the Metro Bank example I gave you guys earlier. Do I even have a page that can support that kind of content, right? And this is another item that I look at whenever I evaluate which keywords to gun for, because the SEO works faster if I can apply the SEO practices to an existing page than if I had to build a new page specifically to rank for that keyword. And so this is what this pertains to. All right, let's move on. So talking about search motivations, right? I talked to you guys earlier about navigational keywords, informational keywords, or discovery keywords. I talked about commercial keywords and transactional keywords. But what I have not talked to you guys about is how Google calls these. And, one of the things that I used to joke about is if you hop in an elevator and you're anywhere higher than the 4th floor, chances are you would have encountered somebody hop in the elevator and then open their Facebook because nothing, right? You don't need to be motivated to open your Facebook, to open Facebook. But search is always a highly motivated activity. Always. It's a highly motivated activity. There's a curiosity. They want to know something. They want to go somewhere. They want to do something. They want to buy something. And this is why search is sort of one of my favorite strategies. And so when you build out the content on your page, you have to ask yourself, okay, am I helping facilitate something somebody wants to know? Am I helping facilitate something somewhere somebody wants to go? Am I helping them facilitate, learn a process, do something new? Am I helping them facilitate, make a transaction? And are you creating the best possible buying experience on that page, the best possible how do I navigate my way to that location kind of page, the best possible recipe and how to cook this kind of page, the best possible informational kind of page? Are you helping to satisfy this specific search motivation? Okay. So one last bit. This graph is related to the item where I talked to you guys about long tail keywords. Uh, and I think a lot of people put a lot of emphasis on wanting keywords with high search volumes. Like for most people that work on SEO, everybody's always after high search volume, high search volume. No, I don't want that. That only has 10 searches. No, I don't want that. That only has 20 searches. But my question there is, why? People, keywords with 40 searches, 50 searches, 80 searches are probably, those 80 searches and those 40 searches are probably being done by people that already know what they want. They've already shopped around. They're past their awareness buying experiences. They're past their discovery phases. They're past their consideration phases. They're in preference. So why not go after those keywords? Would you rather go after 1,000 strangers or 20 highly qualified buyers? And I would go over that. I would always go after the 20 highly qualified buyers all the time. So it's not always about thousands and thousands of visitors, right? It's about the search motivations and intentions that you're going after. Okay? So going back to content and keywords. Before you create any content, know the search motivations you're trying to satisfy, right? Put yourselves in the shoes of your audience and then find out, what motivated their search? Are they wanting to be aware of something? Are they wanting to discover something? Are they looking to educate themselves about something? Are they looking to buy something? Are they looking to compare brands about something, right? How do you support that keyword? And it's by providing it the correct volume of content against that search intent. And remember, whenever you create commercial content and when you want to rank for a commercial keyword, it's about how do you help them facilitate discovery? How do you talk to them about easing their friction? How do you talk to them about addressing opportunities? All of these matter. Okay? So, moving on. I'll give you guys an example of great content. And then after the content section, I'll take a quick break to address some of the questions because the questions are piling up, which in my opinion is terrific, right? Because you guys are turning this into a conversation. So here's an example of why terrific content matters, right? What is the search motivator for Manila weather? Right? Like what motivates you when you type in Manila weather? Like, what is the persona of the user that types that? What is the persona of the person with the mobile phone that did that? Why did somebody type in, why did somebody type in Manila weather in Manila, and so on and so forth? Now, one of the things that I want to drag your attention to here is who's the most authoritative source for weather information in the country? Pag-asa, right? Pag-asa is the single most authoritative source of weather information in the country. But in this search result, notice how it is 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth result. How come Google is offering a snippet, a top story result from Rappler? How come Google is preferring the weather network over Pag-asa, right? Why does it do this? Because if you go to the Pag-asa website, right? If you go to the Pag-asa website, this is what you see, right? Who is this content built for, right? Who's this content built for? I can only explain this in one way, right? It is because the search motivator for the person that built this page is, I want a page for people that aspire to be meteorologists, right? But what if I'm not an aspiring meteorologist? Like if you guys check out the search volume on Philippine weather, like especially July, August, September, it's fairly high, like it's in the tens of thousands. Clearly, there are not tens of thousands of aspiring meteorologists in this country, right? And so the people that are performing the searches are, let's say, moms, right? Moms are performing the search. Why are they performing the search? Should I send my kids to school? Should I pack their raincoats? Should I have them bring an umbrella? Should I drive them or should I allow them to commute, right? Like this is the search motivator of the mom, right? A dad, should I commute to work? How should I dress? Should I bring an umbrella? Should I bring the car, right? Like these are the motivators for that search. And this page absolutely does not address it. Like, let's talk about a single person, right? I want to go to Boracay. Is it ideal to go in the next 2 weeks? Right? This page does not answer that. And so to me, it is super fair that Google puts it as the fifth result, right? Because it doesn't answer any of these search motivations. Now, look at how Rappler addresses this, right? This is how Google addresses it, or this is how Rappler addresses it. It talks about, hey, is it dangerous to be outside? Should you dress for the weather? What should you be worried about if you are in Cavite, Metro Manila, or Rizal? Right? What should you do in case of massive floods? There are inner links going to rainfall advisories, and so on and so forth. But look at the content that Rappler puts out. And this, by the way, is a video from Pag-asa that they embedded in the website, right? And they're saying, okay, here's what you should prepare for in this weather system, right? And because Rappler satisfies more search motivations than Pag-asa, it's fair then that is what appears on search, and that it's fair that is then what satisfies search motivations. Is it any wonder that Google puts them at the top of the page results? All right. Now, one last idea before I jump into questions. I wanted to show you guys this, right? Like, this is just a quick thought, or this is just a quick convo. On the screen is like a splatter of different ranking factors. It's a splatter of different relevance factors, like the things that make you appear on search, the things that make you rank on search. And, in the middle of it, I put an image of Google Rank Brain. And what I wanted to explain here was, I want everybody to remember that Google is very AI now. Like, I know there's a lot of talk, but Rank Brain is sort of like, it's super not new, right? It's super not new. 10, 12 years ago, in order for Google to advance how the search engine performed, in order for Google to perform any tests about what a good search result was, engineers had to go in, make modifications to the search algo, find out whether it generated more clicks for users or did it generate less click-through, and then they manually adjusted these. That's not the case anymore, right? Google uses a search algorithm called Rank Brain, and what Rank Brain does is it takes a look at the pattern of behaviors that users have, right? Do they care about meta titles? Then it gives it more weight. And then they'll realize, you know what? Users don't care about meta titles. Let's give it less relevance. Do users care about site speed? Okay, let's make it more relevant. Do users care about content? Okay, more relevance. Oh, look at that. Users don't care about whether pages have a lot of backlinks or not, then less relevance, right? So this is what I mean. It is not people that are manually engineering Google to behave in a certain way. It is our collective behaviors that are saying whether a ranking factor is relevant and to which degree it's relevant. All right. Now, before I move on, let's hit some questions. Okay. Woohoo, a lot of questions. I gotta scroll all the way up. Okay, so let's start with the first one, right? So the question says, will SEO matter if a startup is using a site with a paid or a free domain? A paid or a free domain? Okay, so how I understand this is if you are a company.wordpress.com, right? And if you are a company.com, and the answer is yes, because most of the time, so TLDs matter, .com, .org, .gov, .edu, like these things matter, right? So when somebody gives you a .club, .attorney, .whatever, right? Like that's nonsense. Like those TLDs don't matter. It'll be harder to rank. But when you usually get a free domain, it's probably because you've got a free website. And a free website has a lot of limitations. Like, you don't know if you can do canonicals because you don't control the HTML code, right? You're getting a free site. You don't know if you can control if you can generate schema. You don't know if it has an HTML generator. So there are a lot of things that you don't know. When you get a free domain, you're probably also getting a free website. And the problem there is the free website, right? You can't put all the optimizations that you want. If the free site is slow by nature, there's nothing you can do to get that to load in 3 seconds or less. So yes, but not for the reason you think, right? So the answer is yes, but not for the reason you think. It's because free domains come with free websites, and it's the free websites that are very limited. Okay, let's take the next question. Okay, the next one is, let me see. Which is more effective, a one-page website or a website with many subpages? Many pages, like always, many pages. And I'll explain that, right? Remember how I talked about ranking equity and then search visibility, right? Search visibility is how many ideas you're relevant for. The more pages you have, the more you are able to satisfy search motivations. If you only had one page and you're talking about your brand and your products are there and whatnot, but remember, a page can only have so many H1s, and you only have the benefit of one meta title, and you only have the benefit of one URL, and you only have the benefit of, well, no breadcrumbs really, because you can't go anywhere, right? And you can't get inner links because you have no other pages. So a one pager is losing out at least on 5 or 6 of the things that I showed you that help signal relevance. So definitely a one pager gonna lose. Okay, next question. Is it okay to embed the content of another company's website into your website through an iframe? We're offering a product of a company, of company A, instead of creating. Okay, so I'll answer this. So the answer is, if you're embedding it via iframe, then great, because an iframe is a JavaScript function, and Google actually cannot read what's inside, right? Google cannot read what's inside, so Google does not know you're taking content from somebody else. Now, let's say you did not do this via iframe. Is it okay? And the answer is yes, as long as you put in the proper attribution to the content. You're not claiming that the content belongs to you, right? So as long as you don't claim the content belongs to you, you put in the proper attribution to the content, you're saying this content belongs to these guys, then you're fine. Okay? So yes, you can use it. But if it's duplicate content and it's in an iframe, it doesn't matter, as long as I hope the iframe is not the only content on that page, right? Then that becomes problematic. So next question. Let me see. Okay. How long do you usually see results when doing SEO for a new site? Okay. Let's clarify something. Is it a new website or is it a new domain, right? Those are two very different things, right? Is it a new website or a new domain? Because the answer is, if it's just a new website, like take, for example, like remember BPI Express Online, right? Like we're talking 7-8 years ago. This was their old domain before they were bpi.com.ph. They revamped it. And so we worked on the new site, but it wasn't a new domain, right? So when you're working on the new site, fast, because you can acquire any equity they already have and build on top of it. But if you're talking about new domain, long, long. So I'll qualify that. It is possible to do fast. It's possible to do fast on a new website. But the question is, does the new website have any rich grandmas and rich uncles? Like, so what do I mean? Is the new website related to anybody that is more relevant than they are, that can lend some authority, like in the short term, right? If there's that, then the SEO is fast. If there's not that, then the SEO is long, like you're talking long game. And then even then, that's influenced by the vertical. Because if you're fighting in the BPO space, in the call center space, in the real estate space, in insurance, very long game, right? So I think you'll understand this the moment I get the backlinks, which is actually the next topic that we're going to wind up talking about. Okay. Oh, by the way, guys, if you have questions at this point, because the number of chats are massive, right? Feel free to unmute, right? We did not administratively block your voices, so feel free to unmute and ask the question, Uh, so I hope I answered the question about how long does SEO take for a new website, right? It depends on, does new website mean new domain, or does new website just mean new website, right? Uh, how do
Hi,
you
sorry,
implement
that
the
was
SEO
me.
strategy in the backend? Great question. The answer is the website built on what's called a CMS, or a content management system, right? Like WordPress is a CMS, Magento is a CMS, Shopify is a CMS. Like, is there an admin panel for the website? And is it not hard coded? If it's hard coded, I don't know why the website should still be hard coded. No website in the 2020s, actually, no website in the 2010s should still be hard coded. All of them should be in a CMS, because there aren't enough developers in the world to administer to all of the websites in the world. So you want websites that are manageable by normal marketers, normal writers, normal people, right? So how do you implement the SEO strategy in the backend? If it's from a CMS, normally you'll see an SEO function in your CMS, and then it will show you the allocation for meta title, meta description. Do you want to link somewhere? Is there an image you want to put an alt tag to? Do you want to put a canonical? So if it's built off of a CMS, the CMS has a function that allows you to implement that. Now, if you're particularly advanced, and let's say it doesn't exist, but you know how to do HTML edits, if the CMS has an HTML editor, that's also enough, right? But ideally, CMS. Because if there's no CMS, then only one kind of person should be doing the implementation of the SEO, a developer, right? If there's no CMS, only a dev can implement the SEO's recommendations. Uh, how many keywords should we prioritize on a given page? Great question. Short answer, 3 to 5. Short answer, 3 to 5. Long answer is it depends on what pain, friction, opportunity you're trying to satisfy in that page, right? I only actively optimize a page for 3 to 5 ideas and no more than that. And normally it's like 1 to 2 keywords at best. The other keywords are just variations, right? Like SEO service, SEO services Philippines, a professional SEO services. That's just one idea, right? So I normally limit it to 3 to 5 keywords per page, with those 3 to 5 keywords not being more than 1 to 2 distinct ideas. But 3 to 5 keywords per page, I will manage to rank it for more than 5 keywords. But I only actively work on inserting a keyword in the H1, URL, meta title, body content, first 100 words against 3 to 5 keywords on any given page. Okay. Next, uh, so do exact match and partial match keywords still apply? Okay, so great. Let's disambiguate. The word exact match types are not keyword types that exist in SEO. So match types are not keyword types that exist in SEO. Uh, Keywords in SEO are only they are only uh, branded, informational, commercial, transactional, right? But I think I know what you mean. So you're talking about whether it's a core term or whether it's a long-tailed keyword, right? And when you say partial match, you're talking about long tails, and when you're saying exact match, you're probably talking about short term. Okay, do exact and partial match keywords still apply, and which one is more effective? Match types, so the exactness of the keyword is not as important in the on page as it is in the off page. So exact matches and the exact matchedness and partial matchedness of the keyword is more an off page consideration. Like, how do people refer to you? Do they refer to you as SEO company or SEO company Philippines, right? Or do they refer to you as SEO company from Makati, Philippines, or do they just refer to you as SEO company? So as far as a backlink is concerned, the exactness of the backlink matters in terms of which ideas you dominate. But in terms of on-page content, it's not that big of a deal, right? Google's current algo is so smart that it understands context so that you don't have to do exact match keywords in X amount of density, right? Like, notice in those ranking metrics, I didn't say keyword density of 1%, keyword density of 3%, repeat a keyword once every 100 words. I didn't say anything like that because it doesn't matter anymore. The search engine is great at reading and great at comprehending. Okay. So I hope I hope I answered that. Next question is, Let me see. How do you increase search volume for a keyword you're targeting? That's not an easy question. Okay. But it is doable. It is doable, right? So here's how I'll answer that. The short answer is you can, right? Because increasing search volume means you will influence the behavior of users. Search volume is about how many users search for a given term. So I'll give you guys an example, right? Let's say enrollments. If you guys went to Google Trends today and then you do keyword searches for tuition fee, enrollment, school admission, you'll notice that they trend very high in May. Like they peak in May. They begin to increase in March, increase a lot by April, they peak in May, and then they decline in June, July. I don't understand why, because I was born in another age where the school year is not the way it is now. But it peaks in May, right? Like it peaks in May. But it is users that influence that search behavior. It is not SEOs that influence that search behavior. Can SEOs do anything that influence the search behavior? And I would say yes, but over a long period of time, right? Like as you help people, as you develop awareness, as you develop discovery, you might be able to help influence the search volume for a keyword. But I would say if it's the short term, the best way to increase search volume for a keyword is to drive top funnel awareness for it first, right? Like for me, if somebody said, I want people to become aware of my product, I want people to do more searches for water filters, water dispensers, ceramic mugs, right? Then the first thing I do is I would do a top funnel display campaign. Like that's the first thing I would do. I would get more people to search for it so that more people are curious about, you know what? I did need a couple of ceramic mugs, right? But SEO wise, you can influence it. It's the one thing, yeah, you will be able to influence it like over time. But like, is there a direct strategy you can do? There isn't. Okay. Next question was, okay. So what kind of work do we do with publishers? Great question. Okay. So when people are publishers, the business model is different, right? Like publishers don't make money by acquiring a lead, selling them a service. They don't. Well, they do, but in a different way. And they don't make money by selling a product inside their service. The traffic of their website, the number of users that go to the website is what matters more. The number of people that click on ads, if they're doing affiliate marketing, that's the way they make money. So what we try to do with publishers is we take a look at what ideas are you almost relevant for, what ideas are you almost relevant for, but you're not relevant for because you're just missing some key hygienes. Like for the lack of a better term, we Rapplerize your content. I always like to harp on Rappler because their content hygiene is excellent. Like the technical applications that they put on their content is excellent. They use the keywords on the URL, they use the keywords on the H1, they refresh the content, they skyscraper the content. When I say skyscraper the content, meaning if this article is about this topic and I have something more to say about it, I don't write a new topic, I add on to that article, and then I declare the update. Oh, I have something more to say about it, I update that again. Oh, I have something more to say about it, I update that again. And so what Rappler is essentially doing is they're creating a skyscraper of content that is more valuable, more original, more informative than anybody else that it's competing with. And so they rank. The other thing that they do really well is that when they publish a piece of content, if there is an excuse to link to an article before that they had already published, they will. And if there is any excuse to link to any other article that users should read more on, they will, right? So Rappler just creates this really good content cluster. Like their articles don't stand alone. Their articles stand together, right? And that's why they rank for a lot of keywords. And so when we work with brands, when we work with publishers specifically, this is what we do. We don't tell them, oh, we'll write you content. We tell them, we will help you cluster your content better. We will help you. So we'll normally tell them, okay, this is a great keystone article. Now let's take this article, this article, this article. Let's put them all into one piece. And you know what? I found 7 others that are related to that. So let's point links from all of those articles back into them and get this parent article to link back to a service page, right? So that's the kind of work we do with publishers. Thanks, Vince. Let me see if there are more questions. If anybody has raised a hand. Okay, so there are a few more coming in. I'll address them like at the end of the session. Don't worry, we've got like 1-2 topics left. Okay, so I know that there are a couple more questions coming in. I will give it the last 15-minute treatment. All right, so we talked about the ranking factors, right? We talked about the ranking factors and some metrics, but to me, the most important things that make a website rank, like if you're going to pay attention to anything, it should be your content. It should be the speed of your website, so your site's core web vitals, the mobile friendliness of your website, and your backlinks, right? Like to me, if you were going to focus on anything on SEO, these need to be the things you focus on SEO. All right? So let's move on. My clicker isn't working. There you go. Okay, so let's talk about backlinks, which is, you know, sort of like the dirty little secret and not really the dirty little secret behind SEO, right? So backlinks are, so everything that we just talked about, think of them as quality metrics and on-page metrics, but backlinks are popularity metrics. So backlinks are popularity metrics, right? Like, I think if we say, you know, is Oprah relevant? Yes, Oprah is relevant, right? Smart, knows a lot of people, asks really great questions, produces really great programs. So that's what makes her relevant. Her experience makes her relevant. But one of the things that make her relevant is she's super popular, right? And so because human behavior is given to popularity, the backlinks became a metric for SEO. I'm not sure a lot of people know this, but the idea of the backlink is actually what made Google a game-changing search engine. Like compared to Yahoo back in the day and compared to Alta Vista and Lycos and all of their competitors, the concept of the backlink is actually what made Google a very, the reason it was a game changer, right? And it was Larry Page that invented the concept of the backlink. This is why Google's first name, like back in the day when it was still a Stanford thesis, was called Backrub. And it happened because when Larry Page was trying to do an experiment, he was trying to find out what was the most relevant book in the Stanford library, right? And he tried a lot of metrics to find out which one is a relevant metric or which one is a relevant metric and which one is not a relevant metric. And one of the things that he found was, you know what? It seemed what he discovered was the most relevant book in the Stanford library was Einstein's general theory of relativity. And one of the metrics that he used to determine that was to find out how many times did the general theory of relativity get cited inside the other books in the library. And that's how he came up with the concept of the backlink. Now, one of the things to talk about backlinks is a lot of people think that the only way to go with backlinks is to guest blog post, find an SEO company. But in reality, it saddens me to see that there are still a lot of brands that don't do the legwork when it comes to backlinks. So let me talk about a few, right? So when it comes to link building, there are leased assets and there are earned assets. So let me talk about leased assets first. Leased assets are, you know, places where you can publish your business most of the time for free, right? But you don't control the platform. You don't control you can control some of the content. You can produce the content, but you don't control the platform. You don't control the code. You don't control the data. You don't control you don't control a lot of it. You don't even control whether they can take down your page or whether your page can remain live, right? Like you don't even control that. So pages like Brown Book, like Yellow Pages, Google My Business, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, these are what you call leased assets. Now, take note, they're not owned assets because you don't own Facebook, you don't own Google, you don't own YouTube, right? If they want to take down your content, they can because it's their platform. And so these are why we call them leased assets. You are leasing spaces in these places to acquire a link back to your website. And they are very valid links, right? These are valid vouchers for your website. And in the Philippines alone, if I'm not mistaken, there are anywhere between like 60 to 65 resources that you can tap, right? And so these are what leased assets are. Again, there's about 60 that you can utilize in the Philippines alone. Hot Frog is another example. But I realize that there are still a lot of businesses that don't have a Yellow Pages listing, don't have an Apple Maps listing, don't have a Google My Business listing, don't have a Facebook page, are not on LinkedIn, don't have a YouTube channel. But these are places where you can create a link that points back to your website. So why wouldn't you have one, right? So these are links that you build. And this is why I also call these built links. Now, the next one are earned assets. This one's tougher. Like this one is tougher to acquire. Leased assets are when you leverage your existing this is where you leverage your real relationships into a linking relationship, right? We treat Adobo Magazine and When in Manila as content partners. And so whenever there's an event, we invite them. If they think that that content is worth it, they publish it and we get a link back. That's terrific, right? Business Mirror and Philstar, these guys are friends. By the way, guys, I spend like zero on PR. Like Truelogic has zero PR spend. We don't spend a penny on it. But we get published in all of these places because what we do is we create terrific content. We reach out to publishers and say, so we do the legwork, right? We say, hey, we created some really great content, might be relevant for your audience. Here's a copy. Would you like to publish it, right? And they share it. There are people that share, there are people that share our podcasts. There are people that share our webinars. This got shared actually by some of our publishing partners, right? So what you do with your earned assets is you create content so good and then you push it towards a network where you tell them, hey, does this content matter to you? It's not always about, hey, how much would it cost? I think that's just the lazy way to do it. Plus, technically speaking, an organic backlink in a paid press release is actually a no-no. It's against Google's guidelines, right? Now, one more thing that I will say is these are not the only way to earn assets. You can do, there is guest blog outreaching where you talk to smaller time publishers, but they've got an audience of 10, 20, 50, 150,000 visitors a month, right? And that's still a relevant vouch, right? All you're after is the vouch. I've got an author profile and a couple of articles published on Tycoon magazine because I wrote an article for them, right? So, and sometimes that's what it takes, right? Sometimes they'll say, hey, okay, we will publish you as a guest author, but here are some of the topics that we need. Because it is a give and take relationship. You want a backlink, they want an interesting topic. Fair trade, right? So these are some of the ways that you could do that and the way you can get published in earned assets. If you want to find out more about earned assets, try Googling my name and then you'll see a lot of author profiles, right? And those are all earned assets because those have backlinks. Like I've got a backlink pointing back to us with the Digital Marketing Institute, right? I don't pay them for that, but I teach for them, right? I've got a backlink coming from the Certified Digital Marketing program. And we don't pay them to acquire that backlink, but we teach for them. Actually, a lot of places where I have backlinks is because we teach for them. Again, a way to turn your existing relationships into linking relationships, right? Now, a couple of things though, last few words. Watch out for Web 2.0, blog comment, forum posting. These are these kinds of social bookmarks, these kinds of backlinks are already obsolete. So I don't need you to learn them. I just need you to stay away from them, right? With that, right, here's why backlinks matter. Here's why backlinks matter. This is the result you're looking at is a page called SEMrush. And the numbers that I will call your attention to is the authority score and the backlinks, right? An authority score that's good is 35. 35 is a good score, 35 or higher. If you have an authority score of 35 or better, when you publish a page, you can probably get it to appear on the first page of Google anywhere between 10 days to 3 months, right? It depends on the keyword competitiveness. But you actually can make really good time on SEO results on pages that have an authority score of 35 or better. Like, whether that's on Moz or whether it's on SEMrush. But a 35 authority score or better is ideal. Less than 35, and you're probably talking months before you get a result because you're not authoritative enough for any specific idea. You're probably just incidentally authoritative. Part of what influences your authority, A, is the age of your domain, yes, but B, it's about the number of people that talk about your brand. And what you'll see here on the right, and I can't zoom in because it's a prezzo, right, is backlinks say 1 million, but referring domains say 723. Backlinks is just the frequency of noise about you. It's all of the noise about you. But referring domains are the number of websites that do the talking. So yes, there's a million backlinks about Truelogic on the internet, but those million backlinks, that noise is only being generated by 723 websites. It's sort of like, I hope some of you guys have moms like this, right? But it's sort of like your mom telling you that you're the best looking son in the world, right? If your mom told you you were the best looking son in the world 365 days a year, you would get 365 backlinks, but only one referring domain, right? I mean, it's a very authoritative domain because it's mom, but it's still only one referring domain. In this situation, referring domains, the number of C classes, the subnets, the unique domains, right? The number of websites that talk about you, that's the number that matters. In this box on the right, the 723 matter more than the 1 million. Now, do the million backlinks matter? Yes, but only insofar as that the last one is fairly recent. Fairly recent being, 30 days, 15 days away, right? Because that means you are consistently relevant. Somebody's always talking about you every 30 days, every 15 days, every 7 days. But the number of backlinks are not what matters. What matters is, when did you acquire your last one? As far as power is concerned, the 723 is the one that matters. All right? Last word. Don't obsess with SEO. Don't obsess over perfection. Don't stop because you can't hit all of the metrics that we talked about, right? There is no perfectly optimized website. There is only a progressively optimized website. And with that, I'll allocate the last few minutes we have back to the questions. So let me open the chat again. Okay. I'm going to go from most recent to earliest, right? Because now it's in like reverse. So question, are domain authority and backlink quality related? So the answer is yes and no, right? Backlink quality is more a trust metric, but the more quality backlinks you have, the higher your domain, the higher the domain authority you get, right? So that's the yes. The yes bit is domain authority is influenced by good quality backlinks, right? Like, aside from the fact that you have a technically strong website, that you've got a good CTR, that users behave well in your websites, that they find what they're looking for, you're satisfying search motivations. So aside from the fact that, your website is great, when you get good backlinks, they increase your website's domain authority because a lot of other websites are vouching for you. So yes, they are pretty related. Okay. Next question. How do you choose the right keywords for a newly built website? It's by following the keyword conversation that we had, right? Like, what is your brand? What products and services will receive the work? This month, the next 30 days, the next 45 days? But where are you putting your work towards? Which products, which services, which pages will receive the work? And then you draw out, okay, 1, 2, 3 keywords, 1, 2, 3 keywords. You create variations, and then you say, okay, I want commercially intentioned keywords. So you capture the 3 to 5 keywords that are commercially intentioned, and then that's what you work on. in the URL, in the H1, in the content, in the description, in the inner links, and so on and so forth. Right? So that's how you pick the right keywords. Newly built or old website. I might be able to help out with that. Let me see. So normally what I like to do is I like to draw out the structure of ideas on a website in an org chart, right? Like, and everybody I hope is familiar with an org chart. And then I map out the keywords in an Excel sheet in that org chart. I say, okay, these 3 to 5 keywords to this page, 3 to 5 keywords to this page, 3 to 5 keywords to this page. But that's sort of how I like to do it. So when I assign keywords to a page, I make sure that I'm not trying to optimize for more than 3 to 5 keywords in a page. And I like to see in the org chart, am I targeting a commercial page, a transactional page, an informational page, just so that I know the kind of keywords that are appropriate to that page. But that's how I personally do it. Like, that's how I assign the keywords to a specific page. Next one. When it comes to rebranding, which is advisable to create a new website or retain the existing website and just change the URL and other contents? Thank you. Retain website. Like, unless the old website has baggage, always retain. Age is a relevance metric that cannot be faked, right? Like, you need it. So whenever you have an opportunity to retain the old domain, always retain the old domain. By the way, right? Remember, BPI was bpiexpressonline.com, and they are now bpi.com.ph. It is possible for you to retain the old domain and then redirect it to bpi.com.ph. Like, all the pages from bpiexpress.com, like if you did bpiexpress.com/online banking, if you type that in the URL, you will get driven directly to bpi.com.ph/online banking, right? So you can redirect it. So always keep your old domain, unless your old domain has baggage. Like, it's got, like, there's a love letter in the Google Search Console. Google has a love letter for you saying you've got a warning, you violated a guideline or whatnot, right? Like, save for that. Always retain your old domain. Next question. For follow-up question to a new domain, would it be better to build off-page SEO first than building more content? More of a question of priority. Okay, here's how I'll answer that. A lot of new websites I discover really obsess over their websites to the point that, oh, we're waiting on the site build to finish. We're waiting on the content to finish. We're waiting on the this. We're waiting on the that. And then after that, we'll start the SEO and go like, no, start the SEO now. Start the SEO now. You don't need your website to link build. You just need the domain, right? You don't need your website to link build. You don't need your website to put up a YouTube channel. You don't need a website to build the Facebook page. You don't need a website for a LinkedIn page. You just need the URL. You just need the homepage URL. If you've got that, then, publish a damn homepage and get on with the show. Start with the off page. And then when you're done with the drama of all of the content, then start doing, when you're done with the drama of the design and the 12 stakeholders and the 15 cooks in the kitchen, then do your on-page optimization. But if you can't do on-page now, your off-page does not have to wait. Where resources allow it, do both simultaneously, right? So that's the answer to that. So one is not necessarily a priority. Oh, by the way, if any of you missed the earlier section, we're publishing this on our podcast and we're publishing this on YouTube. So just to make sure, don't feel bad. The recording will be there. You didn't miss a thing. Okay. Last question that I'll take, because, we got to wrap up. And here my team was worried I didn't have enough content for like 2 hours. Okay. If your link building metric is increasing citation flow, CF and TF with citation flow and trust flow, how do you increase these two without affecting the current link building strategy? Okay, that's a fairly technical question. Okay, trust flow and citation flow are just majestic metrics for referring domains. So like some people use trust flow, citation flow, some people do referring domains and links. So in reality, CF and TF are not really SEO metrics. They're just majestic metrics. Ideally, anything that increases the number of referring domains you have, increases trust flow. Anything that raises the number of links you acquire is trust flow. Or sorry, is citation flow, right? So if you're link building, they should normally increase. Like if you're link building, they should normally increase. But trust flow and citation flow increases with the volume of links you have, and trust flow increases with the number of domains that talk about you. I hope that answered the question. There's a few more. When this gets published on YouTube and we didn't get a chance to address all the questions, please use the comments or reach out to our team. But please use the comments on YouTube and ask your questions there. And we'll do a quick, like I remember last time I did like a quick 5-minute, 10-minute video doing a quick answers to all questions, and we'll do a follow-up of this. I'm sure the team's got another masterclass coming up. And remember, this is just the bare basics. We didn't even get into the details of SEO, which is like another 16-hour conversation. So for those of you guys that joined us, thank you very much. I hope I made it worth your time, and I'll see you again on the next masterclass. Cheers.